Welcome to Café Technika.
Hey guys, this is Tom Roberto, your technology shaman. This is Café Technika, and I have a very special guest for us today, Joe Macchiarella. Hopefully I'm not messing that name up too bad and butchering it as a fellow Italian, right? Joe, please introduce yourself and kind of tell us a little bit more about how we met and what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Tom.
Of course.
And you didn't completely butcher it, but you got the last vowel kind of off base there. Macchiarella.
Always. Macchiarella. Sorry about that.
Yeah. I've been on this planet 49 years, and it's been 49 years of dealing with all sorts of creative ways of saying my last name. So
that's okay. I'm always Robert Thomas or something. You know what I mean? It's like it's always two first names. So you and I met. We were kind of a vendor customer type relationship for a while over the years, and then we've just always been sort of in the same industry, right? Like you guys have gone through a couple iterations of private equity and buyouts and shakeups and all sorts of things, right? So,
yep.
That's how you and I met. But please tell people more about kind of where you came from and what you do and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so history of starting out at the bottom where no one wants to start is being a cable puller. So right out of high school, was fortunate enough to have someone in my family that was like, hey, I have a great union job and it's working for this communication company and I could get you in there and, you'll start out by sweeping the floors and then we'll teach you some trade stuff. And that's kind of how I just stumbled into the industry. And I always say it's funny. IT is the land of misfit toys.
That's right.
None of us grew up aspiring to be in technology or wherever we are today. We wanted to be policemen or firemen or whatever,
Right.
Athlete or, something, lawyer, doctor, whatever. But yeah, started out at the bottom with a cable pulling company, union job. And it was great because it taught all the hands-on stuff.
Right.
How the connectivity actually comes into play, right? And how you get the connection to whatever device you're hooking up to at the time. It was so basic. the leaps and bounds we have made in technology in 30 years is insane. But yeah, started out there, cut my teeth on physical cabling, everything from localized to plant cabling to really, high-end type feeder cables, things like that. Started learning the programming side of things, how to program PBX systems, how does data work, and getting into eventually the Cisco routers of the world and really how the voice and IP stuff came together in the later 90s and really caught acceleration in the early 2000s. And then went on to work for companies like Harris Corporation, which deals a lot with government type stuff, the Department of Education, Federal Bureau of Prisons, both local, state, and federal prisons, and all sorts of cool stuff. They made the butt sets. If you
turned out to be correct,
yeah. If you remember the butt sets, the tip and ring butt sets, Harris made those. Other companies did too, but Harris, they made tools and things like that. So worked for them. Went on to work for Goldman Sachs. Became an engineer, voice engineer, throughout the journey through Harris and all that, and worked at Goldman Sachs for a while before I migrated over down to Atlanta from New York City.
Yeah.
And then there worked with a startup company, CBeyond, which became a great Atlanta success story with our being a CLEC, a competitive local exchange. And went on there at first in an engineering type role, and then went into management. And then just, really took well into the management side of things with the technical experience background. Really played well for me getting getting buy-in from people and trust and understanding. And I knew what they were talking about, and then
Exactly.
learning the management stuff there, and then just kept progressing from there. Then where we wound up crossing paths was when I was with Trextel. Um, and I went on board there to be the EVP of operations, and then eventually becoming the COO. And then, like you said earlier, we've had a couple of successful exits there. We sold off our deployment company, Connext, and then we have recently sold off Trextel to Connext.
Two connects, which is like full circle, right? Like everything
Full
comes around.
circle. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
and now focusing on software. So now we have a
Yeah.
startup software company called Intellitrix, and that's where the focus is now.
It's amazing the way things kind of go full circle, right? Because like I also started out in the field, and you're right, like it gives you so much more clout when you become management, and you actually have to lead people, and you can kind of tell them, well, this is how I used to do it, and I understand what you're talking about. But like to do that journey, you get the experience of like 80 years in like 10 years. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
just it's one of those things. So let me ask you this. So like, how do you think your background sort of helped you become successful in what you do? Because you're, again, being involved in exits and things, like you've had a lot of success recently. How do you think that background played a part in that success?
Huge part. So when you come up with the hands-on experience, no matter how you're wired, you always have your guard up, so to say, right? Because you're always figuring stuff out. It's not guard up in a bad way. It could be
No,
for
yeah.
certain people if they're wired the wrong way, but when you're wired the right way, it's actually a good thing, because you're in the figure it out mode.
Right.
When you're a troubleshooter, right? When you have a hands-on engineering, technical support type background, and you're in a break fix world, you're in a connectivity type world, you're figuring out how to make things work, right? And then especially in a engineering type role that I was in, I was a architect, at one point the voice architecture engineer, where you're working on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
voice and the data stuff together, and you're really figuring things out. So now when you get into these more strategic roles, like I've been fortunate enough to find my way into, an executive layer where you still need to figure out problems, right? And
Right.
and you're very inquisitive. And again, guard is up, because you're not taking things at face value. Just because something sounds good doesn't mean it is good, and it could be. You have the mindset of abundance and positive outlook on things, and that helps you get to where you want to be. But yeah, having that troubleshooting, figure it out mentality really helps you, and then again helps you with the people you're leading too, because you're not just telling them what to do. Like, here's where we need to go, here's what we need to do. You
Yeah.
can vision cast with them and say, here's where we want to go, here's where we need to go and want to do, but let's figure out how to do that versus
Yeah.
just throw something together and march at the beat of a drum. That could really not be good music, right?
Well,
So
so no, that's a great point. Like, so let me, I might be leading you a little bit, but like having that kind of, engineer question answer type mentality, like, do you think that that's led you more to certain like types of technology that have made you successful, or like automations that you've put into place as a management, person? Like, how do you think that's kind of impacted your ability to utilize technology?
absolutely. So I'll give you one story. There's many, but I'll give you
I
one
love
more recent one. And if you want more, I'll give you more. Just tell me.
I love the stories. Yeah, I love the stories.
But when I went on board at Trextel at first, they had a lot of needs, right? And that's why I got many other stories even outside of Trextel. But
Yeah,
one of
yeah.
the biggest ones was, okay, we have developed our own platform technology, right? That does all this cool stuff, and it's got all these value props, and you have background of the
Sure.
platform, so
Yeah, yeah.
you know a lot of that. So I don't need to get into that. But point being is, hey, we got our own platform, but okay, great. Are we, who are we using it on? Oh, well, we're not. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, um, and the CEO absolutely knew, like, we need to get there. Like, it does all this great stuff. And oh, by the way, we'll save a ton of money by using eating our own dog food
Yeah.
versus using someone else's platform. Okay, great. But getting to the point of, okay, why aren't you on it? If it does all this cool stuff, it does all this cool technology, how come you're not there? What have you tried to do? Where have you stubbed your toe? What's preventing you? And just why? And coming from an engineering background, you become a master at root cause analysis, the five
Yep.
whys, right? Why you go in your garage in the morning and you have a flat tire? Why do I have a flat tire? Oh, there's nails on the floor, right? Must have ran over the nails. Well, most people would stop at that. Oh, yep, ran over the nail. Okay, sweep it up. I'm done. Well, no, why were the nails on the floor? Oh,
Right.
well, they were sitting on a jar on the shelf. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Well, okay, how did they fall off the shelf? Well, I don't know. Why'd they fall off the shelf? Oh yeah, looks like I got a hole in the
Massive leak.
ceiling
Yeah.
and there's a leak. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
anyway, just getting to the root cause of it, and walking through that process with smart people. They see you're being smart about it. You're not just dictating to them, get us on this new platform. We're going to save a whole lot of money. Like, engineers don't care about that. Engineers care about purpose and what they're delivering and the outcomes and how great my technology is that I've created and what are
Right.
the benefits people are going to see from it. Like, I'm enforcing change.
Yep.
And that's where having the figure it out mentality really played well, because we were able to dive into and find the root cause of why and what was keeping us stuck. Okay, now let's work on a solution. What gets us unstuck? So I came on board there in June of 19, and we were on that platform for all customers come November, which
That's
was
crazy.
lightning fast when they were trying
Right.
for 2 years or something like that before that,
Yeah. Yeah.
and not knowing why they can't get this new technology in place. And then rest is history.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's why I feel like you and I kind of gravitated towards one another. It's that engineering background, right? You always hear that saying, like a fisherman can always see another fisherman from afar. Like
Mhm.
we had the same sort of mentality. And I find it very interesting to talk to other engineers because there is sort of like a commonality around how we think. And like you said, like purpose driven, right? To say like, it's cool that it has all these features. Why would I want to use that stuff? Right. So like, how do you feel like that impacts your life? Like personally, like like does technology consume you a bit, or do you keep it at bay? Like how do you manage that personally? Just even in a management role, right? Like constant emails and things. Like how do you kind of manage that?
So that's tough. That's a tough,
Yeah, yeah,
that's a tough scale to balance, right? Because and again, this is where an engineering mindset really helps you, because we get inundated now more than ever. Even compared to 2 years ago, the amount of in-mail that we get of, look at my new technology, look at the greatness this is doing, look at how much money this saves, and look at how much efficiency this brings. And you get blown away and caught up in the moment, like, oh, this sounds great. Just like when AI has been around for a lot of people don't understand. AI has been around for a long
yeah.
time.
Right,
But
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
guess what?
100%.
A year or two ago, it's like, oh, this AI stuff is great. Everyone's doing
Right.
AI. We all need to do AI. Why?
Yeah. What are
Just
you
because you
using it
hear a
for?
buzzword and people are saying how great it is and how efficient it is, why? Like, does it even match our business model? But again, it all comes back to why. So
Yeah.
anytime something hits my radar, I look at it through the lens of, why would I want to do this? Does this align with my business, or even in my personal life,
Yep.
whatever, right? Does this align with outcomes that I want to achieve? I look
Sure.
at it through that lens first before I even, go any further. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, so you bring up AI, like tell me how do you feel about that? Like, all right, it's been popularized. A lot of people are creating new tools for it, and you've seen it a lot more than you used to in several years. So it's like, are you utilizing AI? What are your thoughts on kind of like where we stand with that today, especially from an engineering point of view, right?
yeah, so technology, and this,
Yeah.
It's powerful in anyone's hands. It is as great, as good as the intentions are, and it is as evil as the intentions are, right?
I agree
mean,
with you.
technology and AI especially could do some serious damage to the world.
Yep.
But it could do, and it has been doing, a lot of greatness to our world and our society, and especially
Yep.
when it comes to healthcare, medicine, surgeries, whatever.
Sure.
It's coming in. Technology comes into play in many great forms. So again, looking at it through the lens of, does this align with what we're trying to do as a business? And if so, okay, is it going to create potentially the outcomes that I'm going to want to create for my business? And if yes, and yes, we are using AI in our world today. We actually
Yeah.
have been using a level of AI in our platform. It wasn't full blown AI, but we do have what's called event handlers in our platform, as you know.
Yeah.
That creates, it's basically, AI is nothing more than algorithms. I mean, just
Yeah.
really seriously advanced algorithms, right?
Right.
But with machine learning capability, that it just makes itself better with repetition, etc.
Right.
So we did scratch on that early on with our platform, as in development mode, and now more than ever, we've really gotten into, okay, where could we take this AI, like truly take AI in our
Right.
platform, creating the outcomes that we want. Because when you're running software, any software company, for the most part, you're relying on data
Yeah.
to do something, whatever it is it's going to do. In our case, we're collecting data, and we want to correlate data, and we want to create outcomes for the customers that'll save them money and all these other great value props, right?
Yep.
So how does AI do that? And we know how AI is going to do that. And now it's the matter of, developing at rapid pace where it needs to get to. So
No, I think like you said, it depends on what you want the outcome to be, right? Like I've talked to a lot of people about this now, and it seems to be like a commonality that, like, if you have the right intentions and you're trying to apply it in a certain way, like you're gonna get it to help the business or you personally, or like workflows. And especially with, like, if you look at it from an automation point of view, like you can remove a lot of the repetition and easy work and stuff. But it does have that edge to it where it's like, well, it could have unintended consequences, but it could also be like really bad if the person's trying to do
yeah.
something malicious or whatever. So like I do agree with you there. But you are seeing it everywhere. So like what do you think it's done to some of the society things recently? Like, do you think that it's bringing people together? Do you think it's pushing people apart? Like, we always had this debate with social media, but now you're looking at it with AI, and I look at, like, my son using it in school and all this other stuff. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
So again, I mean, it's got good and bad to it, right? It depends on the person using it, and what their intentions are.
Yep.
For your son, for instance, good kid, and he's not doing anything nefarious, right? And
Right.
he's, and all the stuff he's viewing on the internet and stuff he's doing, the work he's doing for school, like, AI is really going to help him because it's going to bring him the content he wants to see. And that's what it does. All these algorithms in TikTok and social,
Yep.
Instagram, everywhere else, whatever's getting thrown in front of your face, emails coming your way, ads coming across the screen as you're surfing and doing other stuff. That's all AI in the background, right?
Yeah.
So if you're doing good, wholesome life, it's
Yeah.
going to help you.
Right.
It's going to bring you the content that's going to make you better. It's going to make you smarter. It's going to help you do things faster. It's going to get you to answers quicker. If you're doing bad stuff and, you're looking up, naked women and,
Yeah.
and watching Ponzi scheme videos,
Yeah.
and, like, it's going to continuously feed you bad, just like the media, right? It's feeding you negative information, negative. So AI has the ability to create a very negative mindset for people. If nothing more, forget the outcomes. It'll create highly negative mindsets for people, and then people
Sure.
that are prone to depression, and all this other negative stuff that could happen in life. I mean, it really accelerates that fire. So it could be, it is not could be, it is really bad for certain things.
Yeah.
But again, if you're doing a lot of productive, wholesome, serve others, you have servant mentality, and everything is good that you're doing out there, and you're just constantly putting good out into the universe, so to say, you're putting good into your phone, your computer, and all this stuff, you're going to get good in return.
Yeah.
And the algorithm's going to pick up on the good stuff, and it's going to fuel that fire for positive reason and highly positive outcomes. So
No, I agree. Like,
it's
so
beauty in the eye of the beholder type thing.
yeah, that's true, right? Like, well, so you've had operations type involvement, right? Like you've run operations, you've been involved in operations. You've also had a lot of sales experience and stuff. Like, if you were to have to point at one thing, either sales or ops or something like that, where you think like, hey, AI is going to make a big difference here. If I was doing this and I had that tool, this is going to be way different in the next year or so. Like, where would you look? Like, what's something that you would maybe give people advice on?
So it could help in all the above, whether you're ops, sales, marketing, whatever. There's all sorts of AI tools out there, like beautiful AI for presentations, and there's just all sorts of AI type tools. And there's a lot of freeware out there.
Yeah.
And even using something as simple as Chat GPT alone and paying the $20, $20 a month, is really helpful, because now you're cutting down on, and I mean, even the most novice of internet people or users could really take advantage of this stuff. Like, and it all depends on what you're what type of company you're with, what your role. Like, are
Yeah.
you with a really high end company that you got to pump out some really high end stuff, and studio quality type, you know, 30-second bits, and AI will help you, but you really need to understand how to do this stuff,
Right.
and edit and etc. Where if your company is just trying to get footprint on the internet, and you're trying to put out some nice looking content, pictures and messaging, and I mean, Chat GPT has been extremely helpful to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But again, there's so many tools out there. There's Lavender for email writing, which
Really?
really helps you hone in on effective messaging, where it scores the messaging that you're writing, and it tells you like, this is the A+, you're good to go. Go ahead and send it. And if not, it gives you triggers. It'll tell you things. And again, there's so many tools out there, but Lavender is one example of, it'll tell you, hey, this will be detected as spam. So if you plan on sending this to people in like a campaign, so to say, and you want visibility, you want high visibility on this, you're going to need to reword it, and it's going to tell you spam detected, right? Or
That's
it's going to
pretty
tell
cool.
you, yeah, and it tells you things like too many hedge words, and it points it out for you. It tells you, here's where they are. Here's where you're missing the mark. Go ahead and change it. Too many words. It's too long. Shorten it, and you want to be at this many words, and it grades
That's
it.
pretty cool.
You're A, B, C, D, F, like needs work, and
I haven't seen that one before. I've used like Grammarly and stuff, but like I haven't seen Lavender. I'll have to look
Grammarly's
at that
another
one.
one. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
another one. And that's the thing too. There's so many tools out there that do the same stuff. And my advice to people out there, so if you're a novice, I would start out with freeware, so you could test and see what is working for you, because just like Chat GPT, there's the free version and there's a pay for
Right.
version, and the free
Right.
version gets you going, right?
Yep.
And you could kind of try before you buy type of thing. Like, don't just dive into something because someone says it's good. Like, anyone hearing this and hears, oh, Lavender, I got to go get that. No, you don't.
Yeah, right, right.
It's just an insight to, this might be able to help you. And
Sure.
oh, by the way, Lavender has a free version. Go try that for a week before before you go ahead and sign up for a Chat GPT free version. Go try that, right? And
Listen, if Joe Mack is recommending Lavender, I would take a look at it. Like, it's probably pretty damn good. So
Yeah.
so what if you flip the script on that and you said like, okay, you definitely were in the workforce and you're an engineer and stuff. There's some analog stuff that goes around too, right? Like people have these mentalities around keeping to-do lists and, post-it notes and like, printable CEO type stuff. Like, is there any offline stuff that you would give people advice and say like, this really worked for me? I've kept technology out of this part of my life or my job because it's kind of screwed me up. And I think there's another way to do it. Like, what would be something there that you can point at?
So as much as I embrace technology and have worked for technology companies throughout my career
Yep.
and have evolved with technology, so I'm not
Big
someone that's
build-up, yeah.
against it. I do not use technology for keeping my stuff together.
Organization, yeah.
Yeah. For me, nothing beats writing your list, having your to-do list in your face. Every day, if I had my book here in front of me, I could show you. It's in my bag.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
every day I sit down and I say, okay, here's my top 5 list I'm going to work on. Like every week to start the week, I have, okay, I am going to have my top 2 to 3 things that I'm going to work on this week that I have to get motion on. And that's the overall strategy component, right? And then I am going to have, sub tactics that I have to do, tactical stuff I have to do every day that drives towards those efforts. And those alignment, the strategy pieces, I do those, to start a quarter, let's say, right? And so this quarter, I'm going to accomplish these 2 to 3 big rock things. And then every week I'm going to have these smaller rocks. So I got the boulders and I got the rocks and then I got the pebbles. And every day I have a list of my pebbles. I have, probably 5 pebbles going on every day. But it's very important for me personally. I mean, other people out there will tell you different stuff. They love technology and technology makes them so much more efficient getting their work done, and not for tasking, at least for me. I have to write it down. I have to visualize it. I have to comprehend it, understand it, and hold myself accountable to have that check mark every day.
Yep.
And people have told me before, like, there are awesome project managers out there, and they're like,
Yeah, yeah.
there's software for this, and I get it, but I'm not managing numerous customers' projects. Like if I was managing a whole, different worlds of stuff,
Yeah.
then that's where software will probably, it's going to help you because you have to be agile. There are scrum masters out there, and there's just stuff that you have to do to stay organized because you're managing 5 different customers and 3 projects under each one, and you can't write stuff like you'll fail, flaming train wreck, you won't be employed. But when you're in a strategic type role, you are documenting these things in a database, so to say, because I want my peers and my fellow executives to be able to see what I'm tracking towards. So don't get me wrong. There's tracking mechanisms that I'm dropping inputs into that they can keep tabs on me, I can keep tabs on them, and we can hold each other accountable. But when it comes to me organizing my day to day and working and getting tasks and getting things done, there's nothing better than, at least for me, manual work, Post-it notes. I might use, I'll use Siri for silly stuff like, hey, Siri, set a reminder to call so-and-so at 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
Right. And there she goes.
She's
setting up a reminder that I got to kill.
No, look, you're actually saying exactly what my mission is, right? Because there's a delicate balance between analog, old world thinking, where you're actually like tactical, right? Pen, paper, very linear. And then you have this new world, which is totally agile. Everything is data, everything is automation and AI. And like somewhere in between all of that is how you can be successful. But I don't think people talk enough about some of the simple stuff, right? And like, actually, one of the questions I would ask you is like, is there a trick that you've had, especially like, again, I'm very interested because you come from that engineering background, like, how do you keep it simple, right? And like some of it for me is like, well, if I have to write it down, I'm going to boil it down to the simplest essence because I just don't want to have to write a lot of stuff down, right? So it's like I'll figure out how to make it simple. What is your trick for keeping things simple like that? Because we talk about very complex things, automation and software companies and like all of these logistics things that we've done. How do you keep it simple?
You keep it simple by, again, jotting it down and having a simple methodology and it's routine. There's a
Mhm.
ever living cadence that has just lived inside of me forever. That has been, okay, I am going to work on no more than 5 things today,
Yep.
pebble wise.
Yep.
And simply write, like, you don't write out what they mean, and
Yep.
it's just a simple term, you know, contracts, contracts for identification.
Mhm.
And I know I got to go to all my contracts and make sure the identification language is aligned,
Right.
right? And because that's leading up to a bigger rock, which means I got to get that aligned, because I have other pebbles that have gotten done already or need to get done. That's leading up to a big thing, which is leading up to me launching a channel program, partner program,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, but you don't see none of that on my day to day. All you see
Yeah.
is
Right.
pebble,
Right.
pebble,
Right.
pebble,
Right.
pebble.
What's the pebble thing? So like I'm interested in that, like frameworks, right? Like I love different frameworks. Like what's the pebble thing with you? Like where did you learn that? How did like what is that?
I learned that from someone way smarter than I am. But yeah, and that's how he framed it. He said, "Look," and this gets to, really leads into and aligns with very well, actually, which I found out later, in my career, was scaling up the Rockefeller
Yeah. Yeah.
principles.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Everything Rockefeller touched turned to gold, right? Why? Someone did a whole analysis on that, a whole research, and did a whole program around that. Like, here's how they got there, and they call it scaling up, how to scale up your business. So it eventually aligned to that. But in scaling up, what you do is, okay, you meet to start the year. Where do we want to be? Where do we want to be by halfway through the year? Where do you, and you really go even beyond that, but you go, what's your 3 HAG goal, your 3 year goal, and what's your BHAG goal, your big, hairy,
Yep.
audacious goal, right? And so you're looking far, far out, and he called, those are called boulders, so to say, right? Or even
Okay.
mountains at that point, right? Because you're looking, BHAG wise. But as you bring it in, you go from, mountains, to hills, to boulders, to rocks, to pebbles, right? So
That's
you
really
start
cool.
out, yeah. So you start out the year doing your yearly planning, and you're planning for your quarter, but you're doing your year out plus, and then you're planning your quarter, and then you meet quarter. Well, you're meeting on a cadence every week, or you meet every day, real quick, a huddle, 5-10 minutes, and then you're meeting every week. You're meeting every month. You're meeting every quarter, and there's different exercises that go on in those. But what it really boils down to is that daily pebble.
Yeah.
What pebbles do I have to throw, get out of the way, that are going to lead me to my rocks, my boulders, my hills, my mountains, etc.
Yeah, that's an awesome metaphor for it, because it's like you move enough pebbles, you can move mountains, right? Like that's a great way to think about it. I haven't actually heard anybody say that before. Like that's a cool one. I have to look more. I'll check out. I have that Rockefeller book, but like I got to look back at that now. That's pretty interesting.
It's an amazing program. We ran it at Trextel. And you saw the proof in the pudding, right? We
Yeah.
were able to have 2 successful exits and spin off a startup company because of it. And I mean, it works. So
Yeah.
that I highly recommend to people that are in, running a business, not people that are in the day to day, pumping out product and things like that, but the people that are responsible for strategy. The scaling up Rockefeller habits, hands down, is the best. And I've been part of many different programs over the years in different capacities, and this one was the best, absolutely.
Well, so you have interesting experience that some of the other guys I've interviewed so far, like they don't have a ton of experience. One of them had a ton of experience, but like the private equity world and exiting a business and everything is totally unique. Like it's not something you can ever be prepared for. It's always got twists and turns, and like there's a lot of emotion built into it. Like what's your advice for somebody listening that may be thinking about exiting a business or what they should do with their business, and like
Mm-hmm.
your experience with those exits? Like it's always interesting to hear people's story and take on that. What would you give that? Like what advice would you give them?
Well, first and foremost, why do you want to exit is really important. That you gotta, in my opinion, you gotta answer that first. Is it out of desperation, right? Is it out of frustration? I just want to be done with this. Like, it makes good money, but it's just so much work, and I just want to retire, and so it all depends. And there's no wrong reason either. Like,
Sure. Yeah.
different strokes for different folks, right? So you want to sell your business, it's your business. Do whatever the hell you want, but understanding, it's really important to understand why you want to do it, because you are going to have to go through evaluation process, right? And you got to know what narrative you're going to spit. Like, you got to be a good storyteller. You got to have your story down, because you will negatively impact your evaluation by sending the wrong message, right? And you may not even get a deal if you send too bad of a message, but you could be cutting yourself short. Like, you don't want the other end to know. It's like buying a car, right? If their dealership's hurting and they're desperate to get cars off the lot, they're not going to tell you that, right? They're still going to try and sell you for as much value as possible, and get the most money that they can for that car. You should be doing the same thing for your business. You don't want to let the other end, hey, I'm just going to drive off into the sunset. I made so much money off of this thing. Whatever I could get now is just gravy. No, no, because they're going to want to buy it for as little as they can. I mean, it's just basic economics, right? No one's going to want to pay top dollar for something unless they have to.
Right.
And so you got to answer that question first, is why am I selling my business? And then if there's an overall strategy, like our strategy was always to get to be a software company. How do we do that? Again, that's where Rockefeller comes in, and all the cadence and everything we did. And so we knew where we wanted to get to and how we were going to get there. Now the timing could be anywhere, right? And we were very fortunate to get to where we wanted to be much faster, because we had all of our questions answered before that. And again, the only question you cannot answer is when, because the things are fluent in the process. Like, you could have an idea and you could have a goal, but things are fluent. Like, if you're scaling up a business and you're wanting to do a exit at a certain amount of revenue, and voila, we hit that number, let's go put it out for bid. You could, but if you've gotten to that point so fast, why would you do it right now?
Yeah.
Right. And then you got to understand where's the trending going? Like, if you got there really fast and you're forecasting out and you're running your game and everything, and like they do in Wall Street with quants, right? They run the quant game on stocks, and if they know this is as good as it gets at this point, sure, then it makes sense, right? But if you go, if you're a startup and you go from 0 to 25 million and you're looking at 10x valuations, let's say, that sounds great, $250 million, but what if you get to 25 to 50 in half the time you got 0 to 25?
Yeah.
Don't you want to hang on a little bit more, right? Is it not slowing down?
Is
it just gaining momentum, right? So there's a lot of factors that come into play, but the most important part is to know where you're going, where you want to get to, around what timeline you want to get there, and why are you looking to exit the business would be the biggest question. Even if you're not actively wanting to exit or interested in exiting the business sometime soon, you got to know why you would want to exit the business in order for everything to really work the way it needs to work. Because again, you're going to want to tell a story. You got to have a narrative. Your financials will tell you all the financial stuff the bean counters need to know in order to stroke the check, right?
Yeah.
But when it really comes down into the, figuring out the whys of everything, that's really important, because part of selling your business is selling a story, and you're not snowing anyone, right? It's not for a negative reason. It's for a good reason. You want to tell a great story because you have a great product you're looking to sell people, and you want maximum dollars for it.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. Look, I've had several experiences now with exiting and PE firms and things like that. And you're right, it's just as much about storytelling and building a use case, right, for the business, and the reason why you want to give it up to somebody else, as there is finance, right? Like, a lot of people will tell you it's just finance, but it's definitely not. Like, I think I'll shift gears a little bit, like using that same kind of mentality though. So exiting businesses and startups and that kind of thing. Like, how do you feel about the generational divide between people? Because you tend to find a lot of young people starting out in their careers at startups. It's exciting. There's less
Hmm.
rules. Like,
Hmm.
how do you find that environment and the difference between somebody coming in kind of green and young versus somebody that's kind of seasoned and tested?
So, and this is just personal opinion and personal perspective, right? It doesn't mean this is how a lot of other executives think and things like that. It's just me personally. I think when it comes to the green factor is great in terms of creativity, right?
Mm,
Like for me, and especially with us in startup mode, I would not be comfortable bringing anyone on the executive team or in a highly strategic or even any strategic type capacity that is very young, right? And it's not an
hmm.
age thing. It's not like, or hey, young kids don't want to work, and not
Yeah,
nothing,
yeah, yeah.
nothing like that.
No.
Because there's plenty of hard young working people out there. I see it all the time. I think when it comes to being creative, that's a young man's game, right? And building and creating something cool and something effective, and that that's where you want the younger generation, so to say, because they are way more creative than us older folks, right?
Mm,
And they're, you know, it's just like when you have a young kid, you have a 4-year-old child, right? They are so innocent, they're not tainted.
yep.
They have pure thoughts, right? Everything is positive, and they just want to have a good time, and they're playing creative with their toys, and that's, that a lot of technical people are like that in the younger part of their career, because they like the creativity, they like the freedom, they like, tinkering and doing things and figuring things out, and that's where the creativity comes in play. But when it comes to the strategy side of things, you have to have experience. You
Yeah.
have to have battle scars. You have to have battle tested, approaches and think what has worked, what has not worked, and have evolved over time, not stagnant doing the same thing over and over again. So, but you get that from the creative people, I think. At least I have. I've
Yeah.
I have fed off of the creative people because I see how excited they are with what they're building. I remember how I was at their point in their career and how excited I was discovering new things and educating people on stuff and whatever, and fixing broken things. Like how excited I was, I see how excited they are, and it kind of fills my bucket and gives me juice to go fight for the things we got to get on, the executive layer and the strategies that are needed, and to go fight for what's right to get us to where we need to be as a company. It just all comes. It's like an orchestra, right? I mean, everyone has to play their instrument, perfectly in order to get the perfect outcome, and that's what it's about. You're not gonna go get a violin player to go play, the bass, right, and
Yeah. Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
So,
Joe
I just.
Mack, man, you gave me another one today where like I've never actually heard anybody describe it like that, where creativity comes from the younger people because there's less like inhibiting the way their brain works. Like you always hear about stories where people say like if you walked into a third or fourth grade classroom and gave them a major problem that the world was facing and asked them, they'll come up with the most creative answers because they're not inhibited by all the other experience, right? Like they'll just
Yeah.
give you simple answers. That's very true. And I often struggle with like, why was the beginning of my career so exciting and, felt so vibrant, right? When I was working, and why can't I kind of recreate that as I get more and more experience? I think it actually, you're probably right. Like it comes from just the creativity that you had back then of saying like, ah, the hell with it. I'm going to try it this way and try it that way. And you weren't really afraid of doing things. Whereas as you get older, you kind of have the burns and the scars to be like, yeah, I can't touch that. It's hot, like.
Yeah, and the younger generation too. Here's a really, a lot of people say a lot of negative things about the younger generation, and that's not fair, right? It's just different. I even told someone this not too long ago. Maybe you're just becoming an old cranky man. Like you remember when you were a kid, this is coming,
Yeah.
one of my buddies in New York, right? We
Yeah.
grew up in the city, sitting on what we call the stoop, right? The front
Yeah.
porch, but we
Yeah.
called it a
Yeah.
stoop. Remember the old man that would come screaming out the window and sometimes throw a pot of hot boiling water down to get off his stoop? And maybe that's you, right? You just don't want these damn kids around, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair to give, the younger generation a certain, stigma, right? Um, but they're just better at this type of stuff. They don't have the boundaries that we had growing up as a older generation. Just like the generation before us had even more boundaries than we did, right? And more boundaries, generation before that. So they have even less boundaries. And point being is every generation before you has less boundaries, which gives them more ability to be even more creative. Like, you get to a point now where, these generations that are, that are in the working young generation in the working world, where they don't take no for an answer. Like they, kind of our generation was more of a, if your elder really dropped the hammer on you and said, no, you can't do it, you didn't do it, right?
Yep.
These younger generation people call that entitlement. What does this entitled guy think? How did he grow up? Well, no, it's not entitlement. It's just less boundaries. He's
Mm.
thinking creatively and he's challenging you, which you should really embrace. Like you may not be
Yeah.
looking at things the right way. Like again, I think the younger generation, they are way smarter than us because they grew up with nothing but technology. Um, they don't know the world beforehand, and they've really come through this big boom of everything, and they spent way more time understanding this stuff on a recreation level than we did at a work level. Like when you have to work on something, you're only giving so much time into it during your day, because then you got your family. So again, older generation, you have your family, you have your kids, you want balance, quality of
Right.
life. You got to spend time with your kids, your wife, etc., husband, whatever, you're doing in the world, travel, this, that, you're trying to balance work and life, where younger generation kids, they have all sorts of free time on their hands, and they're
Right.
they're dealing with this stuff on a fun level, recreation level, and they're learning at so much more of a rapid rate than we were. They've been exposed to so much more than we are on a regular basis. They're smarter than us, and I get yelled at all the time by saying that by people in my
No,
generation, but
I find it really
I
interesting,
believe
right? Because
that.
like I'm listening because so my whole spiel, right? Like my whole shtick is we're a generation that remembers the world before the internet. And there's a lot of stuff that the younger guys could probably learn from that, pull from, and say,
Of course.
here's the best pieces of the analog world. And we shouldn't forget about those pieces because they're important, right? We don't want technology to limit them. You're actually saying something that's making me think where it's like, well, on the flip side of that, you have a generation where they grew up with this stuff, and maybe because they had boundless uh, uh, creativity and boundless tools that they could utilize, that maybe there's something to pull from that, and to say like, yeah, they have a different thought process too, though, that maybe can be like there's something in there that I'm trying to pick into, but that's a pretty interesting attitude. Like it's something that, again, I haven't heard. This is why I had to have you on, man, because like you always have a different way of looking at things, and I really respect that. Like I think, like I said, you could always kind of meet somebody and go like, this is somebody that gets it. Like you definitely have a cool way of thinking, and I think it's important that
I
people.
appreciate it.
No, look, that it's very important, and I think, look, you can't be as successful as you are, and you can't have the exits and the executive presence and all that stuff without having some of that in you, to just go like, look, I see things differently, right? Like I can go from A to D, and I don't have to pass through B and C, right? Like I can just get there. There's something in that, and everybody's got their way. You definitely have that, and I like it's a cool thing to hear. Like I got to think that through more. I'm actually taking notes, and I'm like, there's something I'm going to change my mentality a little bit because of what you just said. So
Well,
it's
don't
true.
get me wrong. There is so much value in showing them analog stuff, right? That that
100%.
that
Yeah,
applies. That's
100%.
important. Like there have been things I've taught the younger generation in the workforce that they were just, just blew their biscuits on. It's
Right.
that easy. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Right. Oh my God. Like,
Yeah.
so there are certain things that we know that are shortcuts that are easier the analog way. And
The pen and
but
paper one is huge. Like when you say pen and paper, like I've gone through that exercise with younger people, and when you sit down and show them, you're like, look, if you just write out, like you said, like pebbles, right? Like if you define the 3 to 5 things that you need to do today, and you do that every day, at the end of the week, you've moved so much more work. But like some of the technology, like they're like, well, look at how many points and clicks I did, and look at all the data I put in. You're like, right, but the result wasn't there because you fell into like this like procedure process type thing. Like I almost feel like it's like a link in the chain, right? Whereas
Yeah.
like the old mentality was like, no, the hell with it, I'm gonna write it down, then go do it. It's
Right.
like they just don't have that, but they definitely have us on like, hey man, I got an AI thing that's gonna write this email for you. You're like, I didn't even know that existed. Like that's
Yeah. And there's even things like, the power of just doing. Like a lot of people with technology, it kind of aligns with the analysis paralysis type thing. Like they are so hyper focused on sticking with the technology for things that they get stuck or they don't get momentum on things. And things I've taught the younger generation is, look, I don't care how good your strategy is. I don't care how good your product is. I don't care how star spangled awesome all these other things are. If you don't do, like, doing is 80% of being successful. Like the other stuff will fall into play. Like the best strategy in the world is not going to make you successful just because it's the best strategy in the world. Like a fact, right? And
Yeah.
80% of success is just doing. And the younger generation, at least the people I've coached and worked with closely, and many over time here, they did not realize that. Like,
yeah.
the cost of
Perspiration.
inaction,
Yeah.
and the cost of inaction is severe. Like even if it's not perfect, just do. You're going to figure something out along the way. You're going to learn something along the way. You're going to find a golden nugget in something. Even if it doesn't create an outcome, it could change your perspective on something, right? It could really change the flow of something. Just do. And these are things like that: the pen and paper, the pebble trick, the just do, even things like, showing up. Like that's a big gripe for the older generation, for the younger generation, not me, but other people.
Yeah.
is
Show up.
the showing up on time, being commitment, the dedication, this and that. It's perceived in different ways, and helping the younger generation understand it's as simple as, hey, just being on time goes a long way for a lot of people. It's a lot. It's a lot more forgiving to show up on time and leave early than it is to show up late and stay late. Like a lot of people don't recognize when you stay late, right? Oh, I worked until 10 o'clock last night. Yeah, but you know what? No one saw it.
Yeah.
So instead of
Yeah,
working
that's
till 10
true.
o'clock, show up on time and work till 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
believe me, I have this
Like
argument all
little
the time with my
things.
wife.
Yeah.
No, look, I could sit here and shoot the shit with you all night, man. Like I really appreciate, your attitude on things. So I'll end it with this. Like, so where can people learn more about you? Where can they learn more about your company? Like, give yourself a shameless plug on where people can go to work with Joe Mack.
Yeah, so you could email me at Joe Mac, JOEMAC, at intellitrex.com. That is INTELITREX.com. And then intellitrex.com is the website. I'm on LinkedIn, of course. You could get with me on LinkedIn, send me a connection request. I have book a time with me. It doesn't have to be for a sales engagement. It could just be to hook up and, shoot the shit and bounce ideas off of each other. And I talk to people all day, every day. That does not result in business, because, again, engineering mindset, engineering background, very inquisitive, and I want to learn, and I'm bouncing my strategies off of people. And hey, bounce yours off of me. More than happy to just talk to people and help out however we can for each other. So
That's awesome, man. Listen, Joe Mack, you have made Georgia proud, but you've made New York even more proud because you came from here, and you can never pull the New York out of the person. So I appreciate that background, and I appreciate you coming on here. So, again, guys, this is Café Technika. We attack kind of complex technical issues and boil it down to the simplest we can. We give you different strategies for working in a successful model. We appreciate you listening, Joe. I appreciate you coming out here and doing this, man. This is fantastic.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tom.
Of course, of course. Thank you for listening, guys. Please stay tuned. We'll have more episodes and more people that'll probably tell you that Joe Mack and I are idiots, and they'll give you yet another strategy to make you more successful than we are. Café Technika, Technology Shamanism. Thank you, guys.
Oops. Bye-bye.